Is shadowing wasting your time? Hi there, welcome to Erin's English Corner. Shadowing is a very popular strategy nowadays, highly recommended as an effective way to learn English, especially for listening and speaking. I noticed that the definition for shadowing is a little blur as people use it differently to mean different strategies that is a little different from the original shadowing method. For those of you who don't know what shadowing is basically repeating after the audio sound continuously as soon as you hear it, kind of chasing after the audio sound like a shadow, hence the name shadowing. So there will be two sound sources overlapping each other in shadowing. One is the audio you are listening to, and the other one is your own voice trying to repeat after the audio source, just like this.
Here to these absolutely beautiful mountains and the cliff sides, or we can go hang out by the beach. It's convenient. I mean, everything's so close. Variety of sites and stuff you can do. Yeah, what a great place to be right now in Taiwan. So what you guys want to do today? Just do some exploring. Check out more.
Shadowing is believed to be an effective strategy to train your ears as you have to concentrate on listening to the audio sound, and to improve listening skills as well as your accent, because you will be mimicking not only the sound, but the intonation and the rhythm of natural English. And also to reach fluency sooner as it gets you to speak sooner. However, there are many drawbacks many English learners might not be aware of. The first drawback is it is a very difficult strategy to implement. It's quite challenging to repeat the audio sound as soon as you hear it without stopping and continue to do that all the way through. Think about the clip that I just shared with you with me doing the shadowing. Do you feel comfortable with the speed, which is the speed at which native English speakers would speak? For beginners and intermediate learners, it's already a challenge trying to understand what they say. On top of that, to follow an audio at that speed is an added stress which might discourage them from practicing consistently. But in my opinion, even if we use something that's more appropriate for their levels, it still requires a lot from them. In addition to learning new knowledge, you really have to concentrate, which is actually very exhausting. You saw the video of me shadowing earlier, but I was very tired after shadowing for just a few minutes.
It was very hard. That's all I can say. It's not easy at all. If I listen and watch the video, I have no problem understanding what they're saying. But to actually follow them right after, it's hard, I think, because you have to try to listen to what they're saying next as you follow what they just said.
So that's the first drawback of shadowing. The second drawback is that there is a risk of developing bad pronunciation habits. As the audio is played continuously, you cannot stop in the middle and try to pronounce again the word correctly when you make a mistake. While shadowing, you might notice that you have pronounced certain words or phrases incorrectly, but if you stop and trying to correct it, you will get lost because the audio doesn't pause and wait for you. For this reason, there is a risk of developing bad pronunciation habits. Another drawback is that you might end up mumbling instead of speaking clearly. As I mentioned earlier, in shadowing, the audio source and your voice are overlapping, which makes it really hard to hear the audio sound that you're supposed to repeat after clearly. And you end up kind of mumbling instead of saying it clearly. If the input is not clear, there's a chance that the output, which is what we're trying to say by mimicking the audio sound, is not going to be accurate. So you might be following with the right intonation, but your pronunciation of the words or the phrases is not as clear as it should be. In this way, it's not as effective as it could be because most of your attention is on following the audio source closely and not falling behind. The next drawback is, in addition to mumbling, because your focus is on the speed rather than the content, you might be misunderstanding the context of what you're saying or not understanding it at all. To understand the context of how English is used is a very crucial key to learning English. So to miss that element is not helpful at all, in my opinion. Some people might use shadowing as a technique simply to train their ears to get used to English sounds or to have a better muscle movement of their mouth. So it doesn't really matter if there's a misunderstanding of the context or the content of what they are shadowing. But if I tell you that there's a better holistic approach, would you be interested? We'll talk about this holistic approach more in another video, but for now, let's move on to the last drawback. The last drawback, in my opinion, could be the biggest drawback, which is discouragement. Learning English is a rather long journey, so the key is to enjoy the process. However, if you feel that it's too difficult or too exhausting, and you feel kind of stressed out, it might discourage you from continuing on learning. And that would be so sad to see because I know as you climb the mountain of learning English, you will start to see the beautiful sceneries that you've never seen before. Especially as you get closer to the top, the world that opens right before your eyes is indescribable. And I hope every learners will get there. So these are the 5 drawbacks of shadowing. I would recommend something called copying instead. Because the term shadowing is used so broadly, you might be thinking, this is exactly what I'm doing. The biggest difference between shadowing and copying is in copying, you actually pause the audio and repeat after it. Make sure that you can say it correctly, and then you move on to the next part. Unlike shadowing, where you don't stop the audio sound and just keep chasing after it without stopping until the end. This is basically the technique that I used in learning English, and it's a much more effective way than shadowing, in my opinion. If you'd like to find out more about the strategy or the method I took, you can find out more in this video. Shadowing is a training strategy for listening and speaking in terms of training and improving the mechanical parts of the skills. For example, to train your ears to get used to the sound, the intonation, the tune, the melody, the rhythm of English, as well as to train the muscle movement of your mouth for speaking. However, the ultimate goal of learning to speak English is to be able to freely express yourself in English. Shadowing, in my opinion, is not directly related to this purpose. Personally, I've never done shadowing, and for the reasons I mentioned in this video, I actually don't recommend it to English learners, especially to beginners and intermediate learners. Again, those reasons are it's a very difficult strategy to implement, and there's a risk of developing bad pronunciation habits. Also, you tend to mumble instead of speak clearly when you're doing shadowing, and there might be misunderstandings of context or not understand the context at all. And lastly, but most importantly, you might feel discouraged to continue to learn English after doing shadowing. So what do you think? If you've done shadowing, comment below and share with me your experience. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, God bless.